Okay, let's look at a more useful join. Let's select the last name and their job title for each employee. I want to know their last name and I want to know their job title. Now, where does job title come from? If we look over here, here's job title. Employees do have a relationship to their job title and is based on a foreign key. We could come over here. If we're not sure how to do this, we can come over here and look at this relationship and go up here. Let's look at it. Okay. So the employees have a job ID column and it points to the jobs table and the job ID column in there. So that's how these two tables are joined together. There's a relationship between the foreign key of the employees table and the primary key of the jobs table. So let's go over here and write the query using that. This is where the database diagrams come in handy. When we're not sure how the relationships work, this shows us the relationships and how we can join the tables. So we're going to get the last name and the job title, and we determined just now from the employees table join. So this is just a regular join with the jobs table. Employees join jobs. But we have to tell it a little bit more than that. And I'm going to tab this in. I could put it all on one line if I wanted to, but I'm going to put it down here on. And then we have to tell it the columns we want to use to join these two tables. Well, we already know there's a foreign key in the employees table called job ID. So we're going to say employees. Now, here's the problem. I could say job ID. Let me explain what I'm doing here. I could say job ID like this. Okay. The problem is we have a job ID in the jobs table and we have a job ID in the employees table. So we have to tell it which job ID we want, and we use dotted notation for that. Okay. So I can say employees job ID. I want that to be equal to the jobs tables job ID. Okay. Notice this condition is inside parentheses. Okay. So I want to join the employees table to the jobs table. And I have this thing. If I'm going to do all caps, I want them all caps, but I don't want to do them all caps. So I'm going to do them all lowercase. I'm joining the employees table to the jobs table based on looking for entries where the job ID in the employees table matches the job ID in the jobs table. Let me execute this. And we can see King, he's the president. Kochar, he's the administration vice president. Dahan is the vice president. Hunold, Ernst, and Lawrence are all programmers. Okay. Let's go over here real quick in the employees table. I'm just going to right click. I'm going to say select the top 1,000 rows. There's not 1,000 rows, but we'll do it quick. It's a quick way to get everything out of a table or a lot of stuff out of the table. So we can see Stephen King. His job ID is AD Pres. Okay. Now let's go to the jobs table. Select the top 1,000 rows as it. And they're doing these all as new queries. AD Pres is the president of the company. Okay. So it linked the two tables based on these job ID columns that they had a matching value. And we used that to look up the full name of the job title, which was president. Okay, so we joined the two tables together based on job ID column in this one and job ID column, which is the foreign key in this one. Remember, the foreign key points to the primary key in the other table. And as a result, it gives us each of the employees matched with the name of their job title. That's kind of nice. Now this can get kind of long, right? So when we start typing all these table names, they get to be kind of long. So we often use an alias, okay? And we've used aliases on columns before, right? We renamed columns with an alias. But we can also rename a table with an alias. So if I want to call my employees E, I want to call my jobs J, right? So I just renamed, I could use the keyword as here if I wanted. But I'm going to call my employee table E, my jobs table J, and I can shorten this down here to just E.jobID and J.jobID. Okay, and that makes our code a little shorter and easier to read. I always tell students, if you're looking at a query and you see this, the first thing you should do is say, what is E? And go look at your from clause and figure out what table E is. Go look at your from clause and figure out what table is J. All right, we can add a where clause to this if we want to. We'll pull out all the employees, but then we'll use a where clause to limit the rows. Last name, like, now notice last name, I didn't have to specify what table it came from. Why not? It's because last name only exists in one of these tables. So it's not ambiguous. Job ID was ambiguous. We didn't know if it was a job ID from the employees table or job ID from the joins table. Last name only exists in one of the tables. Go back to our diagram. Last name only exists in the employees table. It does not exist down here in the jobs table. So I don't need to specify it with its alias. So I'm looking for last names that start with H. Execute that. And I get Hunold, who's a programmer, Hartstein, who's a marketing manager, and Higgins, who's the accounting manager. In the next video, we'll do some more. We'll do some things that are not using the equality operator.